muted, please, until invited to speak during the chat session or the Q&A sessions. If possible, please will you switch on your video when you're speaking as well. You're welcome to also live tweet during the meeting with our hashtag SNP Scotland Malawi Forestry Forum. We've around 90 minutes together, including time for the Q&A discussion. So please feel free to store up questions for that as well. And I'll hand it over to Professor Ian for help.
Okay, thank you very much, Natasha. So a very warm welcome to everybody in the room and everybody online. There's quite a number of people, I think, online as well, both in Scotland, even Ghana. Yes. So there's quite a wide distribution of attendees today. So welcome to everybody. And just a very strong welcome from the Scotland-Malawi Partnership and all of those who are involved in the dignified partnerships with Malawi, because that's one of the very key essence of the Scotland-Malawi Partnership and the Malawi-Scotland Partnership, of course, in Malawi also. My personal connections with Malawi began in 2007, so I was actually a Scotland-Malawi Partnership academic exchange fellow. It was the first time I had ever been to the continent of Africa, let alone Malawi, and I went with my family and taught at the University of Mzuzu for a few months, and it has been a very significant learning experience for me since then, in terms of the colleagues and people and friends that I have working in Malawi and living in Malawi. I'll mention a couple because there's a few people that I have supervised over the years. So Alice Gudeza, who's now in the service department, did her master's with me. Steve Makungwa, who's at Luana, I had the great pleasure of supervising his PhD. And I also had the great pleasure of supervising Henry's PhD, which he successfully passed it by just recently. And also just a note that these friends have also significantly educated me on forests generally, but specifically in Malawi, which is the topic today. And that's why I'm very excited to be chairing this meeting and spend some time talking about forestry in Malawi. So my particular research expertise is using satellites to measure forests. So my expertise is not so much in the trees, but how you measure them from above. This is the first meeting of this kind hosted by the Scotland-Malawi Partnership, and we hope it's not the last. We're looking for your input and feedback in terms of the value of such meetings, so that we could look forward to possibly having this as a regular piece of topic that we catch up with on a regular basis. The one thing just to note, so this is a discussion forum, so we've got a number of people to talk about the issue with some experts both here and in Malawi. It's not an opportunity to necessarily start or fund projects. It's to talk about the context and what the steps are and what the value is of looking at forestry and the way forestry is supported and funded in Malawi. One of the key things that I think we should also just bear in mind is that forestry is a significant component of the ecosystem, but also of the economy. The fact that most people still use wood fuel as the basis for cooking food also makes it a food security topic. So it's a significant and important issue that it's very pleased to see that there's a huge interest in this topic. Turning to our agenda, which I think everybody online has got a link or a copy of the agenda, and it's for people in the room, there's copies of the agenda going around. We're going to open with a presentation by Henry. Then we've got a selection of people that hopefully, I think most of the people are online, and hopefully they're online. If I can keep you to 2 minutes, just so a very quick summary of what you do, where you do it, what the relevant components are of your activities, that would be great. So try to keep to time. And then we'll have a Q&A session. So if you have questions that come up, it's much easier, in fact, for the people online to just note questions as they come up, and we'll keep track of those. We will potentially answer them later, but in the Q&A session, people in the room. Of course, you can take notes. I guess what we'll do is we'll get him to talk through his presentation, probably without interruption, and then we'll do the Q&A at the end of that. So specific question for Henry immediately after his presentation, and then a broader Q&A session after we've heard from some of the key members. So I'm going to pass over to Henry now. Henry's well known in the Scotland-Malawi partnership. Because you've been working with them for how long now?
Yeah, since February.
Since February. And he was commissioned to write a report on the commercial forestry in Malawi, which you're going to give us a quick summary. Okay, over to you, Henry.
Before you begin, Henry, can I just ask you to move the Malawi flag a little bit towards you? Because it, a bit awkwardly right in front of Professor Gunner's house. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
So you've got some slides.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. It feels good to be given the opportunity to present on forestry right here in this room, especially knowing that Malawi is making some strides to forestate their lands. And it also feels particularly good to be surrounded by experts that are here and also back in Malawi. So without much ado, my presentation is on the potential of exploring commercial forestry in Malawi with a focus on the country's settings by considering climate, the environment, ethics, culture, and commercial sustainability, and of course, the profitability in general. So, why do we concentrate on Malawi? There is a dignified partnership that runs over 150 years between Malawi and Scotland. And suffice to say that if you ask the Scots, you find out that 46% of them have a friend with the Malawian. But not only that, both countries do love environmental management. They love forests, and they have got also green spaces, with pines dominating in the forests themselves. And then both countries have also parties to several conventions that have to do with climate change, endangered species, and also biodiversity conservation. So this slide is just a way of background and the key history of forest culture, of forestry in Malawi. To begin with, to begin with, in around 1950s, the Vifia forest plantation of Malawi was established, and that was during the pre-colonial era. And came 1964, the whole chunk of the Vifia plantation was planted with 53 million hectares of forest, and the dominant ones were the pine trees. And in 1964, or between 1964 and 1980, there has been that monopoly of the government of Malawi in trying to manage the forestry industry itself, which came to an end in around 1980, when the government itself tried to commercialize some of its lands to private companies, and these included the then VPLI, which later on changed to RIPLI, and also the Woop Industrial Population of Malawi, otherwise known as WIPO. And then came the 1990s. The trees that were planted, most of them that were planted during the 1950s, had matured, and some of them had over matured. And this warranted them to be harvested, and that happened massively. And it kind of led to the felling of all the planted crops in those lands. And the impact of that was that more bare lands, started emerging. And not only that, as we went towards 2016, there was the high wood demand, which actually became surpassed by the supply itself. So from 2016 to 2023, there were high levels of deforestation and degradation, which actually coincided with the thriving of the carbon trade. And it's that period whereby most commercial investors found the opportunity to actually apply commercial forestry trade in Malawi. So this slide, I'm basically trying to give the current statistics of forests in Malawi. To our left, as you can see, we are saying we have 25% of forest cover in Malawi, and that amounts to 23,677 square kilometers. And in these forests, we have both the natural and the indigenous ones. The natural ones also known as the Nyombos. So in the middle picture or map, as you can see, there is that distribution of the forests themselves across the landscape of Malawi. As you can see, they are fairly distributed. If you look at the upper part, that's the northern part of it, and then the middle part is the central part of Malawi, and down to the bottom part, that's the southern part of it. And to the further right, those two maps are showing the forest biomass studies that have happened between 2016 and rather that have happened between 2011 and 2016. There have been several studies in trying to quantify how much forest we have in Malawi from 2011 up to current. So in my study, the main objective was to investigate the potential of investing in commercial forestry in Malawi, which does no harm, but rather supports the climate friendliness. That one, which is also ethically sound, culturally acceptable, and also fits into Malawi settings. And not only that, the one that accounts for the environmental and commercial sustainability, plus also the one that's there to. And in this study, I focused on 4 key main areas. The first one was to look on the current status of forest industry with regards to the forest cover and the preferred commercial species, the regulatory policy framework, and how it supports commercial forestry in Malawi. The third area, I looked on the socio-economic, cultural, and environmental benefits that one will accrue as they are pursuing the commercial forestry in Malawi. The fourth one was on the prospects or the forces, or rather the risks or the impacts that are associated with running the commercial forestry in Malawi. Yeah, so some of the key findings and considerations of my study are as follows. First of all, I discovered that pinus and eucalyptus are the key species that do favor commercial forestry in Malawi. And not only that, there were also some species, but when we compared and we actually reviewed the literature, we found out that the other species like the Merinia, Borea, the cyclists have got challenges to do with the environment, or maybe they are more susceptible to diseases and pests. So these two are the recommendable ones. And the other advantage about commercial forestry in Malawi is that they start political backing, they start political will or vision that enables someone to actually practice commercial forestry in Malawi. For instance, there is an ongoing national tree planting season that runs from December 15th to April 15th each year. And as you can see to your far right, that's the president of Malawi, His Excellency Dr. Lazarus Chakwera, leading by example in trying to plant a tree during that season's program. The other advantage is that there are supporting policy and legal documents. For instance, the National Forest Policy of Malawi, which advocates anyone, whether it's the communities, individuals, or companies, to actually plant trees with the aim of addressing the bare areas of Malawi. We also have the climate change policy, which actually supports the same thing in the interest of mitigating the effects of climate change. Be planted in Malawi by 2013. This actually fits into the global initiative on forest landscape restoration, which actually has got that huge target of 350 million hectares. And then we have the Malawi Youth Forest program as well. Yeah, thanks. And then there's also the Red Plus program and the modern cooking for health forest projects. And not only that, we have a few other projects that do support the initiative of planting trees. But the key thing now is that the government itself, through the Department of Forestry, is calling out for concessions, or rather concessionaires, to plant trees in the government managed plantation. As you can see my left, there is an advert that was posted in the local newspapers calling out for the interested concessionaires or the interested investors to actually come and plant in the Malawi forest, so to speak. Can we get back to the slide? The third advantage that we have is all about land ownership. do apologize for the technical issues that we have.
Blue box at the top is not online, so.
Yeah.
It's the television.
Yeah, so yeah, sure you, Zoom people see.
Yeah, so I said we have the concessions that are being issued by the government of Malawi to whoever wants to apply trade in commercial forestry in Malawi. The advantage is that these forest concessions are clean and land tenure agreements, simply because you are rest assured of no land ownership wrangles between the investors themselves and the government who issues these lands and controls their proprietorship. This guarantees investment security, which is a key thing that's required when one starts running a business. And if you ask me, how long does this do these concessions go for? They start from 15 up to 60 years, and they also have those provisions of extensions. And then one other clear thing or advantage is the presence of the carbon market. $6 billion portion that needs to be tapped by possible investors. What's needed is to come up with tangible programs that can be laid down to address deforestation and predation. And then there's that need to link up with the Department of Forestry to actually administer that. We have some success stories for those companies that have applied, or for those investors that have applied on commercial forestry with regards to carbon management. We have the Trees of Hope, which applied its trade in the southern region. We have the forest conservation projects that took place in Kuas and Nika protected areas under the REN Plus scheme. And this carbon initiative was brokered by a UK-based company known as the Plan People, and I'm glad that under that scheme, Professor Ian in-house, who I sit beside him, took part in having that project rolled out. However, there are some challenges that are associated with the carbon trade. For instance, it requires the development of the stable national forest monitoring system. It also requires the development of the monitoring and verification system. And not only that, there is also the certification requirements that are deemed as tedious and expensive. And if you also check on the markets where we have sort of limited buyers that have got their own preferences, and most of the preferences do actually go to those that have got big chunks of forest. But this doesn't, stop investors from investing, and this is why you have a lot of companies in Malawi applying the same trade. And then one other thing that you need to consider if you want to do commercial forestry in Malawi is about the certification and exportation of forest produce. For small-scale operators, this is deemed as expensive. And then we have the forest fires, which is one of the challenges as well. Mostly the forest fires are caused by land clearing, hunting, or harvesting of honey. And I would call them as the accidental fires. And then there's this critical sort of fire cause, the incendiarism. And under this one, the causes do include the rivalries that may arise between the communities and the forest operators. And when there's also that conflict of interest between those communities that will surround the forest themselves and the operators, mostly they kind of, you know, show their resentment or show their fury through the setting of fire. However, this is manageable and avoidable because the Department of Forestry and other several studies, successful studies such as Topeka and Umons, have managed actually to mitigate or curtail these challenges. The first one is like a psychological approach, whereby you definitely need, as a forest investor, create a good rapport. That's like a buy-in, you know, from the surrounding communities through offering them pieces of employment, such as employing them as security guards or maybe nursery personnel or those that would actually help in the management of forest. So the other way to go about it is also to create awareness on how the benefits of having the commercial forestry in their lands, you know, or close to them, will actually benefit them. Then the other one is the psychological approach, whereby we have weeding, slashing, or bound clearing or firebreak maintenance prioritized with regards to the planting of the trees themselves. And at least from what Topeka and Umons have explained or have showed, agroforestry ventures like beekeeping, both growing tomatoes, onions, cabbages, and the like, have actually contributed to bringing in the better rapport that exists between the communities and the forest operators themselves. And this has also kind of reduced the fire hazard that do exist by planting the trees themselves. The other challenge that this study also considered was the threat, but like I've said, this is also mitigated through the same way like the fires. That there's that need to create good rapport between the communities that will surround the forest themselves and the operators. There is this challenge of also cash flow. As you know, that forestry is an investment that requires huge capital, but not only that, there's also needs to get to understand what it takes in terms of financial management. Then one has to also consider the pests and diseases infestations that can prevail at any time. The significant ones in Malawi to include the grasshoppers, that infected around 1970s, the binary woolly aphids, the cypress aphids, the pine-shoot beetles, as well as the red gum psyllid that actually resurfaced in 2016. There are also diseases that are associated with the growth of pines, like the Armillaria and also the cypress canker. I mean the cypress canker diseases. But the good thing is that the Forestry Research Institute of Malawi have managed to put this under control. And some of the ways that these have been controlled as follows: the introduction of the natural enemies, the breeding of resistant species, and also the perfect matching of the species and the sites in which they are planted, and of course the use of the chemicals. And one other thing that we need also to consider when doing commercial forestry in Malawi is the occurrence of the natural disasters. I'm sure we all know how the cyclone Fred affected Malawi, but the Forestry Research Institute of Malawi is doing its best to kind of match the species in the right sites, so much so that they planted in an area whereby they can resist very well. There are also breeding species that can adapt to catastrophes like drought. So the other key factors to consider to include the drivers of deforestation and degradation themselves. In Malawi, there's a booming population. For instance, in 2016, we were 17 million of us, but now we have gone up to 20.5 million. And this does affect the demand of resources, and of course, the available wood stock or wood resources now kind of have been surpassed by the demand, like I said. And then we also need to consider the cost of living, of food security, and energy demands that all do lead to dependency on forests for livelihood. So from the literature review that I conducted, as well as from the consultations that I made, the key socioeconomic benefits of venturing into commercial forestry in Malawi includes the revenue generation, the job creation, the forex generation, maintenance of ecosystem services, and of course the growth of the infrastructure and development of value-added products. This all contributes to the 33% of Malawi's gross domestic product, and that's under the Malawi Growth and Development Strategy, key priority area of the agriculture, water, and climate change. So, in conclusion, I'm saying commercial forestry is indeed a viable enterprise in Malawi, capable of generating more than 100% financial returns, at least from the literature review and from those that I presented. However, to realize its full potential, there's need to make informed choices on the species that one has to plant and the site that those species need to be planted. And not only that, there's need also to understand the legal and regulatory process framework that do support it. Otherwise, there's indeed huge political will when it comes to forestry in Malawi. There's also that need to understand the challenges that are faced by small-scale operators as well as the foreign investors. And one key aspect is that there's that needs to include the communities in the management plans, because they are key in safeguarding the forest in Malawi. My recommendation is that why not Scotland Malawi partnership in collaboration with the Malawi Scotland partnership and the Edinburgh Climate Change Institute, of course, with due respect via the Professor Ian Woodhouse, assist in identifying the carbon markets, and of course, give a hand in trying to broker such deals. Let's take advantage of the newly launched carbon market initiative, which has got 16 billion Malawi Kwacha credit facility. Let's start with and then make use of it. Finally, on limitations, my major limitation on this study was that there was scant literature on commercial forestry initiative pursued in Malawi, and we're still on carbon market. But I would understand on carbon market because this is some sort of relatively new concept. I am thankful to the Scotland Malawi partnership for entrusting me with such a noble responsibility. And I'm also grateful to all the individuals and the officers that I consulted, and also those that have supported the interest of this work, and also you, the audience, right in Malawi and here in Scotland. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Yes. So if there's any, I'd like to take some quick questions of points of clarification or specific technical questions that anybody has for Henry immediately. If there is none, remember people online, 2 quick reminders is that you can put your hand up so that we can see if anybody's got a question. If somebody, I meant to check actually, if somebody is monitoring the chats just to see if there's questions that come up. You can alert us to that. That'd be great. In Zoom, under the reactions, you can also do a virtual clap if you wish. If people online want to show their appreciation of Henry's time and effort that went into that presentation. If there are no specific questions, I'm going to move on to, we've got a selection of 4 speakers who are just going to give us very short vignettes of what they're working on and what they do. I'm hoping that Andrew Fields is online. And if you are, Andrew, if you want to just come off mute and let us know that you're there.
I can't see it.
Don't see it yet, see him earlier. So we're going to, Andrew might well join later. So we'll crack on. If there won't be online.
I'm here if you want me next. I was asked to speak.
I am online. This is Tuonge.
Okay, we'll go with you first then. You're first on my list.
Okay, if I can be given a co-host, I can share my slides, I hope. Okay, yes, I can. I just have a few slides with me. If you can confirm that you can see that slides.
We can.
Okay, so thank you very much for this opportunity. So I'm Tuonge Mzumaragawa. I'm the National Chair for the Wildlife and Environmental Society of Malawi. This is a membership organization with 9 branches across Malawi, established in 1947. And if you are not a member, please, the email address there, please join. People forget sometimes that it is a membership organization. So quickly, with regards to forestry in Malawi, our mission is not just to plant trees, but to grow trees. So Wezivo has been working with various partners. Our main group, or the people that we work with, are the school clubs, but also community-based clubs. And these are the growers on the ground. And in terms of our tree planting, tree growing initiatives, we encourage to plant close to where the people are, because we know that trees that are planted need to be taken care of. So this is in homes, around their schools, in their crop fields, where the people have initiatives for woodlots and the like. We do enrichment planting into those woodlots. Also sometimes also in places where people identify as bare lands, and those are put. Roughly about 5,000 seedlings or trees planted during each of the growing season. Our success is different. I can speak to the Blantyre branch where I belong, and we have about 65–70% success with the trees that we are growing around schools and around homes. And maybe in other places, I will speak about that later as a challenge as to why, in terms of our success, we may not have all the figures there. Our planting is collaborative. Most of the times we will cooperate with the city councils that are there, with the water board, both in Blantyre and in Lilongwe. There's collaboration with water board in planting in their water catchment areas. The Department of Forestry, always our partner, and also with several partners or companies that have initiatives. Old Mutual is one that we've done a lot. And NGOs, MCT, I think that they're also here, Ilovo. is we have partnered with in these initiatives. Our challenges or lessons as well, for us, really working with the clubs and the community groups has been our success. Planting where people are close, where they can take care of the trees has been good. That enrichment planting, we've seen a lot of the woodlots for a long time. You know, single species approach in making woodlots is something we've been trying to encourage members of the community members that we need to diversify. It's not just about the tree, but a variety of trees growing together. Having different people participating has been good, and also raising awareness on why it is important for us to grow these trees. In terms of the challenges, going to the point there, is one of the things that people don't understand about the growing aspects of it. There's a lot of partners, especially in the corporates maybe and others, that they're very happy to give trees for us to plant, but they're not happy to provide money for us to grow, because growing needs care. It means those trees must be cared for in the dry season. They must be monitored so we can also see what our success is. And usually that aspect is not one that is really funded. People will buy the seedlings and give us the seedlings for our groups to grow. But most partners do not want to also provide the funding that is needed, grow the trees and to monitor and see how they're doing. There has been some vandalism issues that we've had in trees, in schools, especially where they're not fenced, and sometimes in urban settings where people uproot and resell the trees. More recently, also having learned that floods and dry spells will impact our growth. The recent flood, Freddie, had an impact that we never foretold, in that as refuge areas were around schools, these woodlots and places that for a long time we've been building with the schools became also the sources of firewood and energy. And again, here coming into the approach of seeing, we are exploring within these areas or where we're growing these trees to include other fast growing energy sources. I think I had bamboo on the other area to come into play when we have these kind of situations. So very quickly, I think that's what I can share about WESIM. And again, encourage everybody to become a member where you are and help us with this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very important point, of course, is that it's often the tree planting is often the focus of attention. The tree growing and making sure that they actually survive is a significant part of that. So thank you for raising that topic. Valerie, I see you're online, so over to you.
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, it's a delight to be here. I didn't know about the Scottish group until I saw this conference advertised. And so I'm delighted to have joined, and also with the Polish group that I've also just met. And I hope that we will be able to come together and encourage more opportunities within Malawi. But what I want to do is tell you a little story of hope. There's a young man in Malawi called Jonas. I'm afraid my pronunciation of African names is not very good, so I'll just leave it at Jonas. I couldn't have a party for my big birthday when I was 80, and I always have a big party on my 0 year. And so I had a whinge on Facebook, and Jonas said, "Grandma, we'll plant a tree for your birthday." I thought that was beautiful, and I shared it around the world. And you may find this hard to believe, but this granny living in a Welsh hill village caused over 2 million trees to be planted around the world, from Peru to Finland, from Canada to Australia. Over 2 million trees have been planted. More are still being planted. And I think that was so beautiful. I will never sit under any one of those trees, except the tree that my great-grandchildren came and planted in my garden. All of those trees, though, are bringing hope and help into our communities around the world. I started learning with Grandma which is just me, a granny, and I'll be 82 on the 4th of July. But what I do is I share projects that are affordable, achievable, and sustainable. Mostly, they are also good for the environment. A very good project, which I want to share more in Malawi, is a project about girls creating their own sanitary towels. Sanitary towels have to be disposed of. They are not disposable. They cause a problem within the environment. But my gran, she made my first pads out of an old wincey nightie of hers. They were washed and washed for years. They save families money. They save the environment. It is a wonderful project, and I'm willing to share the clip that was created by a Ugandan well over 10 years ago, and it's now been shared in many, many countries. In Cameroon, they are training thousands of girls. They started by asking me to give them money for a sewing machine, but I had to explain that I can't send money to people, but all the projects are achievable and sustainable. So she made a start. They now train girls in Malawi, and she's now started outreaching to schools. And one of the first things she says is, after she's shown them the clip, is you don't need a sewing machine to make a start. You can start with hand sewing, and it saves money as well as being better for the environment. So that's really all I want to say, except you can find me on Facebook. I'm the only Valerie Wood-Gager in the world, and my project is called Learn with Grandma. There is a group for Malawi, and I hope you'll join. I see Elena is there from Poland. Nice to see you, Elena, and we will be in touch. I have been to Poland a few times, so perhaps we'll do another event in Poland. God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Valerie. Paul. Paul online. Oh, sorry. No, you're done.
Okay. Oh, I wasn't particularly expecting to say something, but I will.
You're on my schedule to give a quick introduction about what.
Okay.
Sustainable Global Garden.
I'm the Managing Director of Sustainable Global Gardens, and I'm here because we have a project in Malawi. We've managed in the Zomba district to plant something like 35,000 trees. I actually said plants, but to be more correct, many of these trees have been recorded after natural regeneration. I'm a Rotarian, and I know that Rotary is particularly interested in tree planting and tree projects, including forest restoration. And I'm here in many ways to look at alternatives to what Henry's been talking about, which has been mainly the commercial forestry sector. I think there's a great scope for forestry work that's not quite so orientated towards the commercial income side, that's more concerned with community development. And in particular, I would say, the importance of agroforestry. You said a very important thing, I think, Henry. I can't quote you exactly, but it was about community involvement. I think that's key to making progress in Malawi. Because, as you mentioned, if you just have a commercial forest and there are people nearby who are short of money, you're going to suffer, as you know, from all sorts of things, such as pilfering, but particularly crime. So I'd like to emphasise the importance of small scale agroforestry community-based projects as part of this initiative. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. A quick final look to see if Andrew is online. Somebody can quickly look down the list.
I can't find him.
Can't find him. Okay. If he does appear before the end of the thing, we'll get him to jump on. So thank you everybody for those small vignettes. So we did that just as an indication of the breadth of interest in this meeting and the attendees. And I noticed there's still over 40 people online. We're going to take questions now in a broader Q&A session. I think there are some points and questions that have come online, so we're just having a quick scan of that. Heather QB, for example, has asking community forests has demonstrated through the WESM is great for the environment. The lack of funding to growing is reminiscent. So many examples where funding prefers something tangible to something that requires an ongoing commitment. Do the local communities also benefit commercially by, for example, by the forestry opportunities suggested by Henry and often just raise those same topics. So I'm going to open that floor. I don't know if Dongi, you want to come back, given that Weston was mentioned in that question. Are you still there?
Sorry. Hello.
Okay.
Yes, I'm there.
So if you see can you see the question in the chat from Heather?
I haven't. Which one? Heather. Okay, I've seen it. Do the local communities also benefit? Okay. Yes. So in terms of the commercially from the WESM initiatives, that's the question.
Yes.
Then, okay, no, not commercially, nothing for all our initiatives. Most of them for the woodlots, it's really for home use and not necessarily for commercial benefits as such.
I don't know if anybody else could, Chad, if you could just put that question back up. So
The problem is, yeah, it's not syncing for me. Yeah, there's.
I don't know, Henry, if you want to comment on that also.
It was just others.
There.
This one or wait.
So I guess the key challenge, Henry, I'll ask you this question, is how do you get communities more engaged? How do you get them as part of the project rather than on the sideline?
Right. Thanks, Professor. That's a key question indeed. How do we get communities involved in forestry? There are several aspects that we kind of get them involved in the forestry. Number one, for them being the custodians of the forest chunks that we have, because by the nature of them living close to the forest themselves, they have stake in seeing it prosper or having it managed sustainably. We definitely make sure that we give them the awareness that they require with regards to what benefits we do accrue from such forests. They are what we call forest extension services that are provided by the Department of Forestry, whereby in the villages, the forestry personnel go and visit them and educate them on how they can manage the forests that they are living in or that do surround them, but also they are educated on how they can take they can measure actually the stocks that they have so that they know how much trees they are there and what sort of key benefits that they can get. So apart from that, there's also some initiatives whereby we do take what we call role models from the communities, train them on, for instance, natural establishments or forest management, and we kind of ask them to train others and impart that knowledge, or transfer that knowledge to their fellows as one way of getting them on board. Ideally, if you kind of involve the communities, you find that all the adventures that we do in forestry, they tend to seem to go the direction that you want. But if you leave them out, they have got that resentment always to say, okay, I thought we would benefit, or we thought we would benefit from such an adventure. So it's being sidelined, and then that resentment is the one that translates to fire. So in short, that's how we do against the communities. Thank you.
And I wonder, Professor Kubi, if you're online, whether you want to just unmute and maybe add to your question and respond to.
Thank you. Yes, Henry has partially answered it, but it does seem to me that if there can be sufficient learning within the communities so that they support that growing aspect, which WSM has highlighted as being such a difficulty, but also then cover the costs of that from the produce they're able to produce as a consequence of the changed environment around the forest, then that must be really beneficial in the community setting, and how much wider that could be too. I think the commercial ideas are brilliant, but we've also got to think of the communities too. Thank you though for Henry for answering it partially.
You're welcome.
Maybe,
Could I add something?
Yeah.
I should start by saying I'm representing a very small group of people, very small NGO. But we've found ourselves experiencing a real surge of interest in keeping trees among small-scale farms. And I think one of the keys has enabled us to do this, and I should say this has been our main schemes are actually in Kenya rather than Malawi, and the two countries are different, cultures are slightly different. So I'm not saying that this experience should necessarily be transferred to Malawi, but I think it's worth a try. What is special about our schemes is we actually pay farmers for the trees they're grown. We don't pay them to plant a tree, but if we find after a year the tree is still surviving, we pay a small remuneration for their care, for their environmental service. And this has been extremely successful. We've just finished a scheme where we planted 200,000 trees, quite a few of them in Malawi. And I think the key that one has to accept is that very poor people are paid a small amount for the care they take to maintain and restore the forest. Payment for environmental services, the group to consider.
And that payment comes from charitable donations through your organization?
We're very small, yes.
Right.
It does, yes.
Because I guess there's the general model of the payment for ecosystem services is that the benefactor of those ecosystem services normally pay for it rather than being charitable.
Yes, I'm a Rotarian. A lot of the 200,000 trees where we pay a one-off payment of the equivalent of 20p. I'm not quite sure what this would be in Malawi terms, but the equivalent of 20p for most trees. And the small-scale farmers, the community, seem very happy with that.
20p, that would be something like
250?
200.
250. Well, we have a partner in Tom, and they're talking about 250 capture.
Okay, I'm going to use that as a link to Ramsey. Ramsey had a comment, question. I don't know if Ramsey, you'd like to come online and express it, but you were talking about a bit more about the economics. Henry mentioned some big numbers like 6 billion kwacha, and of course one of the questions as well, you know, where do those numbers come from, and where does that money originate from? It doesn't literally grow on the trees, and so there has to be some kind of financing that makes that happen. Of course, the points you're making about the community, Henry, is that you know, how does that, how much of that 6 billion would ever actually trickle down to the people that look after the trees? That's also a challenge. But Ramsey, would you like to come on and?
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you, and thanks to the partnership for organizing. This has been fascinating, and congratulations, Henry, on your dissertation, your graduation. So yeah, I think that figure is a big figure, and it's been in the press a lot here lately, and I think it's created a bit of a feeding frenzy sort of atmosphere where everybody, including a lot of people, roads engineering companies and other folks, are trying to secure access to forests. And I think the potential is a potential that could disadvantage rural poor people living in and around forested areas. And so I just think it's something that the government of Malawi needs to manage carefully. And I see Stella and Monica and other people from the Department of Forestry on the call, and it's just something to be cognizant of. And you know, I think the numbers that we're seeing, we think are very overinflated and are representing some gross costs, and you know, don't reflect net revenue. They don't reflect you know, what would be a balance of payments after investments in activities to enforce and conserve and do all the things that you need to do to change the baseline. So yeah, I was just making that comment, and I'm sure it's an area where when you come back to Malawi, you'll be able to engage productively and help to change the mindset. Thank you.
And Ramsey, I might have missed it, you might have said it already, but which organization are you in?
Yeah, hi. So I'm based in Malawi. I manage a project that's funded by the UK and US governments called Modern Cooking for Healthy Forests. So it's a donor-funded project based in Malawi.
Okay, thank you. And Valerie, I'm going to come to you in a second, but Zawongi, I think you had your hand up before, I might have missed it.
Oh no, it's okay. It's
Yeah.
just I forgot to mention to the Scottish people that are there that I was actually a speaker at COP when it was in Glasgow, and I managed to get on Scottish television for a few seconds. It was a very inspiring conference. Unfortunately, then, of course, the war in Ukraine took a lot of the guilt off the gingerbread of what we achieved at COP. But we mustn't forget that actually, in all these things that we are doing, the little things, we can all do the little things. The big things must be done by governments and so on, but we individuals can make a difference.
Thank you, Valerie. Zawongi, I'm going to go back to you. I think you had your hand up before.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I wanted to also just check with Henry in terms of community benefits from the commercial forestry sector. I personally have found that one thing that we don't speak about a lot in Malawi is the issue of population. And most of the times the benefits that do come out are compared to the numbers of people that are surrounding those kind of initiatives. You know, the benefit that actually goes to the individual might be very, very small. And I don't know if you explored this or asked about this, like how would it play with the large numbers of people that would be around a commercial forestry initiative that also would like to get the benefits from that. And another one is really just a comment for me to also see that a lot of the forest reserves that are there that have been degraded, And there's really a lot of push that needs to be there for just restoration. There are places that I believe just needs to be left alone. I live very close to Sochi Hill, Sochi Mountain Forest Reserve, which I feel if there was a little bit more effort just to allow it to redefine itself, but the different activities of different people going in there, going unchecked is also impairing in terms of that natural regeneration process taking place in that area. And I wonder whether there's also any ideas there for any sort of commercial forestry setting up in helping that mountain build itself again. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Tuonge, for the points that you have just raised. And if I gotten you right, you are saying the issue of population, you kind of felt that it would have been tackled more on it and how it impacts commercial or forestry. Let me be quick to point out that that was some sort of out of the scope that I had when I was exploring the commercial forestry in Malawi with regards to the terms of references that I was given. However, I'm happy if there's any study, to do with that. I'm happy to render my hands. I'm happy to venture into that, and we can work out on the same. Like I said, literature has been that scanty, and I do envisage the same to be a challenge. But anyway, with collaboration, maybe we can get the true statistics with regards to population. Thank you. On the second one, whereby you have made mention of Sochi forestry being rehabilitated. Yeah, I do see that one as a viable option. However, I don't want to preempt it because I've seen that we have the director of forestry around by the name Stella Gama. I will pass on to her also to answer on her behalf, but let me do my part on that one. I think the issue about Sochi has been that delicate, whereby people have kind of embedded that forest area or that hill. There have been some efforts whereby they were, of course, they were relocated to safe places, but out of maybe desperation and the like, they kind of gotten back to where they are residing now. And came the disaster, cyclone Fred, they were the very first ones also to be affected. I don't like seeing people suffer, but I thought perhaps what has happened would be a learning time for them to actually think twice on where they're supposed to actually settle. Having said that, I'm sure the government of Malawi through the Department of Disaster is doing something in trying to have those fragile areas rehabilitated in conjunction with the Department of Forestry. Having said that, I would want to invite, that's okay, the Director of Forestry, Stella Gama, to chip in. Thank you.
So Stella is there. Do you want to take up Henry's? So Stella, if you'd like to come on, we'll take a question. Somebody put their hand up?
Yeah, it's Prosper and Former.
We'll take a question from Prosper first.
I also have a question there from Kate in the chat box.
And Kate, yeah, I'm going to come to Kate in a second once we finish this talk. So Prosper, if you want to come off mute. You're still on mute. Prosper, you're still on mute. We can't hear you.
Hello,
Yeah, that's it. Perfect. Thank you.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. I am a Prosper Nkoma working with the Department of Forestry in Malawi, based in Zomba Mountain. First of all, I would like to thank Masid for organizing this meeting. I was looking forward to it. Since joining the department after school from Malawi College of Forestry, I had a little knowledge on how forestry works on the ground. But then this is my opportunity to learn from different individuals. Luckily enough, I'm here to know very well about Professor Chizu, Henry Kazua, and others who are here in the meeting. I would like to thank the Masid what they are doing here at the Zomba Mountain, because this year they have planted about 1,200 pinus trees, which is almost a hectare. My recommendation is that they should continue to work as they are, so that the communities around the Zomba Mountain, which are posing. Hello.
We can still hear you. Keep going.
Yes. I was saying that the Massive has planted 1,200 hectare, 1,200 pinus trees this year, which is close to 1 hectare. But we have a challenge here that the communities around the Zomba Mountain, they are vandalizing this mountain. So we ask them to support us on how to manage this in terms of fire as well as ammunition, so that we protect these trees efficiently for the future, so that we don't have to plant, but also we manage these trees. Thank you.
Thank you. If the director chip in, just go off mute and start speaking. So that's that she's maybe come on mute. Go. You have the floor, Stella. No. Oh, I'm not sure we're getting that. So I'm going to move on to Kate. So Kate, you had a question. Do you want to come off mute and about indigenous tree species rather than exotics?
Yeah, I was just thinking, you know, there's quite a lot of interest in African hardwoods and other African trees that perhaps we don't need to only think about eucalyptus and pine, but other indigenous trees, perhaps fruiting indigenous trees that communities can benefit from before the timber is harvested, perhaps medicinal values, perhaps a mixed like agroecology, agroforestry system. Is this considered a profitable and viable model for forestry in Malawi?
Thank you, Kate. That's another interesting question. That also brings us to another perhaps interesting topic. But suffice to say that yes, there is that potential of growing indigenous trees such as kaya in Malawi instead of the exotics. But when it comes to business, you kind of look at the returns that can be accrued within a short term or long term. So kaya kopeka is one of those trees that take long, you know, in order to be harvested. You are talking about more than 30 years for them to reach that maturity. And this is why most of commercial forest operators have gone for the exotics. Right now, the exotics can only take 15 years, you know, before they start being harvested for products. Earlier on, it was between 25 to 30 years, but with the improvement of the trees, the tree species that have been bred by the Department of Forestry, that has been reduced to 15 years. So in short, yes, that's viable, but it depends on when you expect the returns to be approved. Thank you.
No, sorry. Yami?
Yeah. So Yami, would you like to come on and elaborate a little bit on your question, which is really just about the economics of, and I guess the geography of forestry.
Hello, thank you. I work at the Regional Forest Office South, and I know we have had information showing the discrepancies of how viable and profitable forest investment is in plantations that are located in southern Malawi and those that are located in the northern Malawi. There were several findings that could prompt or lead to that those discrepancies, of which one of them was that there was a lot of illegal tree felling and I can say vandalism in the northern, the southern Malawi, like Nachidwa plantation. Of course, that also was scaring away investors to proceed with tree planting or tree growing investment in government plantations. So I was just thinking to say, if we are trying to develop concepts that are to promote commercial tree growing, we should also think of how we are going to bring together different stakeholders to manage such resources in order to support the investors not to lose money. Because it has come out so clearly that you make the first few years of your investment, you will be alone. You'll be doing it without any interference. But when the trees reach a certain age, the communities around will come in and illegally harvest the trees. And this obviously brings a lot of loss to the investor. The same thinking was also aligned to a question that was raised by, I think, Tionge about the Sochi Mountain. There have been several issues surrounding management of Sochi Mountain. And you may agree with me that there is a long-term battle between the Department of Forestry, the communities, and the other several other stakeholders, to the point that the issues are in courts. There was a court injunction that was taken for communities not to be evicted or relocated from the protected area, Sochi Mountain Forest Reserve. All this points at how we are going to work together, how different resources or how different departments, different sectors, different stakeholders are to come together in either management of forest reserves as well as the management of plantation in any form as a commercial plantations or as a sole government plantation. So that was just an opinion. I was not actually asking anyone to respond, but I was just giving an opinion that when we are to promote commercial forestry plantations, we must explore how best we are going to synchronize or bring together stakeholders that are concerned, more importantly, the communities, for them not to become predators at the very end of the chain. Thank you.
Thank you, Yanni. And just to clarify, you're at the Department of Forestry, is that right?
Hello, come again?
You're at the Forestry Department, is that correct?
Yes. I work at Forestry Department, but right now I'm on a study leave. I'm doing my PhD.
Good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
So I think, Stella, Henry and I had a little bit of confusion because Stella Gamma is the name of the director of Forestry. But of course, we also have Stella, who's the CEO of the Malawi Scotland Partnership. So I wonder, Stella, if you'd like to come on, and I think you might have had a comment in the chat, but if you'd like to come on and elaborate that, if you'd like to come off mute. Not seeing any action, so I think there was some interest in school partnerships. So I don't know if Valerie is still here and wants to respond to that question more broadly, or if there are anybody else online who is involved with school partnerships that might want to chip in. No, I'm not seeing. Valerie.
I'm not sure that I'm really well qualified to talk about that, because all I do is encourage people to transplant trees rather than actually caring for them. But I do think it's important that we look at the types of tree and make sure that they are right for that environment. And when you can plant a fruit tree, well, then you're getting something back. So a fruit tree is a blessing that gives us food. And food is becoming an increasing problem. As you've mentioned, Malawi population has exploded, has gone up. This is happening all over the world. The population of the world is exploding. And if the sea levels do rise to the level that scientists predict that they will, there's going to be less land for us to grow food, less land for people to live on. So it's very important that we look at our resources intimately and make sure that we're putting the right thing in the right place. With the floods in Malawi were devastating. And I'm sure when we look at all that water going to waste, water is more precious than gold or diamonds. We can't live without water. We need to harness the resources that we have as well. I know that's all a bit generalistic, but as I say, I'm not really an expert on planting trees. I just encourage them to plant and grow and live. And another good idea actually is planting a tree for a loved one who's left us, planting a tree of graduation, planting a tree actually is a joyous thing. Let's have joy in what we're doing too.
Thank you, Valerie. Of course, there's lots of challenges to do with trees. I planted a tree in my garden recently and some deer came and ate all the leaves off it. So anybody's got to take deer away, I'm all yours. Right,
my cherry trees are growing beautifully.
I'll have to find out how you do that. Whoa. Yeah. My neighbour would be very happy about it. I'm going to give the last word to Henry just to quickly summarise in terms of what we heard in the discussions today and what might be the next step in terms of what you're doing, Henry.
Right. Thanks, Professor, and thanks to all the presenters and the comments that have been ushered. I take pride in the fact that the very last presenters have kind of hinted on the points that I raised to say, like what Yamikan said, it's how I tackled it on the third aspect of it, at one of the areas that needs to be considered, but also the very last one has just hinted on the need to kind of look at what species do need to be planted where. This is genuinely one of those key aspects that one has to look into as they are trying to venture into commercial forestry. So as my final words, I would say the door is open to Malawi. The Department for Forestry very open calls out for potential investors to come to Malawi and invest owned areas. Those of you that are capable, or those of you that do have such kind of cost to venture into commercial forestry, why not go to Malawi and assist rehabilitate the bare areas in the limelight of climate change? Thank you so very much.
Okay, thank you. So, testing, hello. I guess I'm just going to finally thank everybody. So, Tawonga Chimeni, as I did my teaching in Zuzu, it says Pembuka. I always default to. So thank you everybody for the contributions. I'm going to hand back now to the Scotland Malawi Partnership hosts to wrap up the meeting. But thank you everybody for your time and attention.
I'm Stuart. I'm the interim CEO of the Scotland Malawi Partnership, and really just a very brief but sincere thank you from all of us at the Scotland Malawi Partnership to our chair, Professor Ian Woodhouse, a long-standing friend of the Scotland Malawi Partnership, and to Dr. Henry Kanzuwa for his keynote speech and all of the dedication and care that he's taken into researching that piece of work since February. It's been a great pleasure to have Henry with us in the Scotland Malawi Partnership team. Thanks to Natasha for hosting us, to colleagues in the Scotland Malawi Partnership team, and to our speakers, Wongi, Valerie, and Paul for their contributions. But to everybody, to all of you in the room here in the centre of Edinburgh, where apologies that at the beginning we had a break in our internet. The internet signal seemed to be infinitely better from Malawi than from Scotland's capital today. So thank you for your patience bearing with us. And thank you to all of you online for your contributions and for sharing the importance of forestry to you. There'll be a programme of Scotland Malawi Partnership events published during the summer, which will speak of events running up until the end of March 2024. Most of these events are hybrid, and all of you are encouraged and very welcome to take part in these events that you'd like on a wide range of different topics. We're very keen to be Malawi-led, membership-led, and being all about dignified people partnerships between the two nations. After this event, we'll email you a 2-minute survey asking for your feedback. We appreciate if we recognise the problem of survey fatigue, but we'd be very grateful if you would share feedback with us. That's useful for our learning and also part of our donor reporting to the Scottish Government and fund our activities. For those of you on Zoom, you'll see the link in the chat box now to that survey. But thank you very much, everybody, for attending. We'll be sending a link to a video of today's event, to Dr. Henry Kanzuwa's presentation, and a link to the chat box as well. But for now, Zikomo Kwangiri, thanks very much and take care. Bye-bye.